So without any further ado, let me please ask Adi and Joerg to introduce themselves. Adi, would you like to go first? We don't hear you at the moment. Yeah, that's better.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Sorry. Okay, thank you so much for joining, everybody. It's exciting to be in the setup today. I'm here a little bit in a, well, let's say dual function. I'm also part of the WDS team, and I'm working with Brigitte on this topic of digital transformation in that capacity. And in my, let's say, paid day-to-day job, I'm part of Holcim MAQER. Holcim MAQER is the innovation platform and innovation brand of Holcim, and Holcim is a global building materials provider, actually among the two biggest ones in the world. And I'm really excited to share a few examples of our digital transformation journey, to share also a little bit about the business challenges and the rationale why we go in certain areas with our digital transformation journey. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Adi. How about you, Joerg?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Joerg Liphard. I'm born and raised in Hamburg, Germany. I started my consulting career 20-something years back with Arthur Andersen, and then moved after this so-called Enron clash directly to Hackett, to the Hackett Group. Now I'm spending more than 18 years with Hackett. Hackett is an IP-led consultancy firm based out of the US with a strong presence here in Europe as well. And I'm leading the so-called business digital transformation solution for continental Europe. And my team and I are supporting clients to become so-called digital world-class in their G&A or SG&A function, meaning supporting them on their digital transformation journey along all dimensions of the operating model, meaning organization, governance, process, systems, data, talent, and so on and so forth. I worked on all continents, I can say, across various industries. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Joerg. And you mentioned that you're working quite a lot in the area of the SG&A function, and this may not be completely clear to everybody. So could you just elaborate a little bit about what specific focus areas that would include typically in organizations?
So G&A and SG&A, it's really about the core support functions like procurement, HR, IT, supply chain, sales, marketing, customer service, and so on and so forth. And I have to say, I am more a real finance guy, right? So my background is finance, and I are really advising clients around all these kind of dimensions. I particularly in the finance digital operating model space, right? So probably just to give you an idea, I'm currently running a global project together with my US friends at a medical device company, where we're really redesigning the entire finance function, right? So including setting up shared services, GBS, and 3 location, introducing true business finance partnering, implemented digital automation technologies as ServiceNow, Blackline, Workiva, Coupa, all this stuff, right? And driving really as well, and that's the most important thing, the finance talent management agenda as well. So that's more or less my background.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joerg. And it sounds a little bit like a project that you and I did some work on together for over a couple of years.
Yeah, similar.
In the space. So it's exciting times. Adi, could you tell us with Holcim, I know that we're going to hear quite a lot more about it, but more or less, what are the scope areas included in the scope of digital transformation in Holcim?
So certainly also the SG&A functions, as Joerg has already described it. But if you think about, let's say, our core business, which is basically producing cement, producing aggregates, so crushing stones and processing sand into really fine stones that you use then in the ready-mix concrete production, and actually from the manufacturing side, then moving on to moving all these materials, there is a lot of core business processes that we also have to look at, right? If you think about how many materials we move per year, we move over 600 million tons. That also means we have more trucks on the road than a logistics company itself. There is a lot of heavy business processes that we have to look at. And when I started 21 years ago in the ready-mix plant in Hamburg, actually the way we were dispatching orders for the next day was on big A3 sheets, right? And we were 5 dispatchers, everybody writing down in A3 sheets. And then at the end of the day, you would consolidate those into one joint plan for the next day. If you went to visit a plant 4 or 5 years back, you would still have found quite often these big paper A3 sheets. So it's about looking into these core business processes that are interaction between us and our end customers, and how can we actually digitize these. And then many of you hear this also now in the press and online. Sustainability is a huge topic. The construction materials sector is a very, very intense contributor to the global CO2 emissions. So over 30% globally come from our industry sector. The material of ready-mix concrete itself contributes with 8% to global CO2 emissions. So sustainability and becoming, let's say, a sustainable building materials provider is really the biggest challenge we have at hand now. So it's existing processes, but it's also working on this overarching sustainability challenge.
Yeah, and I think, Adi, you've touched on something really important, which is around, there's a feeling or a huge appetite that something needs to change, that businesses need to change something. One of the advantages to having you on this panel is that you're working with so many different companies, and in your career you've seen a lot of what happens in-house across different industry sectors, across different geographical locations, across different types of companies. What would you say is like the starting point for why a business would want to change? We know these change programs are not easy to do. They're usually quite long, they're usually quite involved, they're usually quite complex. So what are some of the driving points, the typical starting points that would bring an organization to say, okay, it's time for us to make some changes in how we do things?
That's a good question. So I think we need to set a kind of context here, right? So when we look back until 2020, we were in the longest, you can call it, economic expansion period in global history, I think, right? So it was all good, but starting in 2021 with COVID and so on and so forth, we are currently living in a kind of challenging environment, I would say. So you can say probably there are clouds in the sky, like inflation, shrinking of worker supplies. We are hitting a recession. We have geopolitical instability with the Ukraine war, Russian war, right? So that's changing a lot. So what we see in the market right now and why companies are changing and what they're gonna do, they need to really do some certain topics, right? So they need to focus on having the right plans available and use kind of playbooks and so on and so forth to really reduce their operational risks. They need to be strategic if you need to making adjustments, right? You need to develop key skill set to be precise when you change your business, your operations, right? You have to make sure that you are having the right fundings in place, and you have to prioritize your investments, right? To stop certain projects, to be strategic, to use strategic programs, and all this digital transformation is key to this, right? So that's a kind of foundation, and there's a lot of pressure, and I will come probably later, but a lot of pressure on companies when it comes to cost, on compliance, on as Adi said, sustainability is a new topic. So there's a lot of starting points for companies to start a transformation journey. But nowadays, with all the pressure coming from this economic environment, the clouds in the sky, that's definitely a starting point for a lot of companies now to really change their way to work, and they start with digital transformation. Oh, long speech again, sorry. Bridget, you know me by now.
It's all right. It's why we invited you on this panel, Joerg. There's some very good nuggets in your long speeches. So if I had to, sort of pick out on some of those, we're really talking about, businesses positioning themselves to be a lot more flexible, a lot more agile, to be able to have processes, to be able to perhaps even see from the, from data what sort of, where to next and what are the next moves, to anticipate what to do with that, and then build your operations to be able to be responsive and also proactive around what we have changing in our environment. Adi, how does that resonate with you in terms of the Holcim experience? Are you, do any of these pain points sound familiar to you?
Yeah, I mean, many of these sound familiar. And then the other thing I think that is also something that is relevant to us is our goods are commodity goods, right? Ready mix is ready mix. The product specifications or requirements are so strongly regulated anyhow. So over product quality, we cannot differentiate us, because if we don't hit the quality, we basically get into serious risks with construction companies and with the legal requirements. So that's a given. And anybody in the industry anyhow has to go into, let's say, product innovation that now attacks the sustainability challenge. So where we can differentiate us is basically through customer experience, through service experience that hasn't been there before. And for this, you need basically digital is an enabler to that. And if we speak digital, it's of course technology, but it goes beyond that, right? It's what Joerg also said. It's about behaviors and mindsets. You need a lot of agility nowadays. You need to take more risks in approaching clients and in testing things with clients, right? So yes, it's technology, but it's also a lot about mindsets and behaviors. And I think it's also about understanding that these challenges a company cannot solve individually anymore, right? There is so much knowledge around, and only by opening up and by becoming more transparent and by moving into collaborative approaches with suppliers, with clients, also to a certain extent with competitors, is essential basically to master the challenges that are out there, not only for us as a company, I think, but in general across industries, right? Because those sustainability challenges, the pandemic challenges, the political situations, it's a society a topic, and you can only do this collectively. So it's technology for us, but it's a lot about behaviors, mindsets, and opening up.
I think you've made a really important point there, because whereas we're talking about the appetite to change is driven by both challenges, it's also driven by opportunities that businesses can sort of move in towards. But we often talk about digital transformation. And for me, those two words are kind of like, we can almost separate both of them, because there's a transformation that is happening, which is for the sake of either addressing challenges or for benefiting from certain opportunities. And yet digital is often used, in this phrase. So I guess the question I'm going to ask both of you is, do you think that companies set out with the particular objective to becoming digitized? Where do you think, the digital space comes into it?
I think there are different starting points, right? When people starting this kind of digital journey, right? So in the end, the cost is always important. Yeah. So decreasing your cost level is key. And just to give you an example, as I said, I'm doing this job now for 20 years. And the last 10 years, I'm running around with a famous number of 0.6% finance cost as percentage of revenue. It was flat for 10 years. Of course, there was a change between transactional processes and value add processes in terms of where the cost sits, but this number was always 0.6% more or less.
0.6%
now of revenue. So the finance cost as percentage of revenue, right? So that was a target of so-called world class. But now with digital, you can say there's a new world class, so-called digital world class. And this number, so this 0.6% will decrease a lot. So by 20 to 25%, right? So cost is definitely an important topic for all companies to start this kind of digital transformation journey, as well as the kind of return on investments for functions. So what you can see is, for instance, if you digitize your procurement organization, so your return on investment on the procurement operating cost for a digital world-class companies probably is 2.5% times higher, 2.55 times higher than for a non-digitized company. So it's a lot of money in the game. But it's not about money overall, what Ali said, right? It's as well about quality, right? So digital transformation, companies are starting it as well to increase the quality of the function, to be a better HR business partner or better finance business partner, because you definitely have better information available, better decision-making capabilities, and so on and so forth. And another topic is definitely as well the customer service piece, right? So that from a internal and external customer service experience, that you try to avoid to have multiple channels, multiple tools, multiple whatever. So it's really about, being more customer experience, increase the customer experience, right? So by implementing tools like, I name it now, ServiceNow or whatsoever, to have really one channel in place, right? As I said, having the right data for forecasting or meta decision making is key for companies as a starting point for digital transformation. And of course, compliance is always a topic, right? Have more transparency on data. It's another driver for companies starting this digital transformation journey. And last but not least, of course, to build a kind of platform for growth. We all and hopefully seeing some economic growth coming up quite soon. So building a platform is another key driver.
Yeah, Adi, you've in the past you've talked a little bit about the Holcim approach, which I think is quite an interesting one, because there's quite a holistic approach towards the transformation journey that Holcim has embarked on. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, so our digital transformation journey really is this, three-pillar approach that starts with the customer and the customer pain point. And this resonates with what Joerg says, right? It's about customer experience. It's about solving pain points our customers have in the interaction with us. And by doing that, basically differentiating ourselves from also the competition. And I just want to give one example from a German area, how intense the competition is. So ready-mix is a non-storable material. You have 60 minutes from producing it, having it in the truck, and pouring it on the job site. That also means a market basically, or the travel distance can be 25 to maximum 30 kilometers, maybe 35. And we have a German market where in this area of 35 kilometers, there are 136 ready-mix plants of various competitions. So you see how big the competition is in such a small market, right? They can call 135 different options to order exactly the same material, where the quality anyhow will be met, because we all have to adhere to the standards. So we need to differentiate ourselves through other means, and that's definitely convenience for the customer that goes beyond the product itself. So pillar one is really customer centricity, understanding the customer, reacting agile to it with what we do in terms of digitizing interactions. And then the second pillar is, and it links to this collaboration approach beyond your own company, right? Interacting with the ecosystem and with other players. You need to have data for this. So we want to become a data-driven organization, of course, for ourselves, to basically start taking decisions based on data and moving away from the gut feeling, experience-based decision taking. But you also have to start sharing data more openly with the external world, because the type of conversation will change. It will move away from, yeah, but you said, I said, you said the truck is out. No, I didn't say the truck is out. The data describes what has happened, and that changes the tone of the conversation internally, but also with your clients, with your suppliers and the ecosystem. It becomes more fact-based, but it also becomes a more collaborative approach of solving efficiency problems and of moving ahead. And the third pillar, and it also links to the collaboration aspect, is our open innovation approach. So we have a unit that does nothing but searching for startups that basically help us to solve our pain points. So we're really active in sourcing technology outside in. We're engaging in the local ecosystems a lot. We have a team now at Slush in Helsinki. That's one of the biggest European open innovation events. where it's also about discussing these challenges, meeting other companies who work on the same challenge. We go to hackathons like Hack Zurich, where we put out data sets because we need external ideas to help us solving our challenges. So we don't think we can solve our challenges by ourselves, and that's why we're really open and we go out into the world to find who are the best partners that we need to basically solve the challenges that we have at hand. And you can see it from that. Technology is not necessary, but technology is not the core of our transformation journey. It's an enabler in certain of these elements, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah. I think what's interesting to see is that, the concept of digital transformation or business transformation has been around for a while. And I think you can probably attest to it that some companies are now on, let's say, their second, third, fourth wave, sort of a maturity cycle. And probably what they are addressing and what they're able to do, what they're tackling is shifting over time. So if you, Joerg, had to look back over the past couple of years, what kind of digital strategies typically have you seen in the past? And I suppose that would also apply to businesses that are maybe starting out or in the early phases of their journey. Like, what do you think are the first kinds of things that businesses are able to achieve from employing some digital strategies?
I think when you look,
I would say.
So when you look back, right? So when I started my consultancy life, it was all about, it comes from G&A function to move transactional work to a centralized location, to shared services, so whatsoever, to really drive down labor cost. And hand in hand with that was the standardization of processes. So the first digital agenda was really harmonizing the system landscape, putting first automation initiatives to the board, right? So uploading some files, putting the first workflows together. And then following by this, so probably 10 to 15 years ago, it started with, let's digitize paper, right? So OCR was a big topic back then. It was the next generation in my mind, really to start getting rid of paper, yeah? So OCR scanning was really one of the first things, following by selected portals that started to let's connect to my suppliers, connect to authorities, connect to customers, was the next big step. And then 5 to 10 years ago, all this kind of smart automation came in, right? So the robots, the bots thing, yeah, all these kind of RPA type of things really was the next major topic when it comes to G&A. There was a lot of mistakes done in the past, right? Because it's RPA was seen as a kind of silver bullet for a lot of companies, right? But in my opinion, it was just a band-aid on a wound, but not solving the problem. So that was the next wave, more or less. And now, for 3 years, 5 years ago, companies started to look at the more comprehensive picture. So what can I do with my ERP system? What kind of other tools like best of breed solutions out there? And then last but not least, smart automation is another big topic. That was another, for me, wave. And now it's really more starting digitalization from a more end-to-end perspective, so enterprise-wide. So, and only with this end-to-end enterprise-wide perspective, you can really drive the full amount of efficiency, effectiveness, so cost, quality, productivity, and so on and so forth. You really need to look at it from an end-to-end enterprise-wide perspective. And that's the wave we are seeing now. That it's really companies are starting to build a kind of enterprise-wide digital transformation journey. And it includes to bring the best people around the globe together when you're a global company. It's not that you're doing something in Switzerland, another group in Germany, and another group in the US. No, it's bring them together. We did a great project with a German automotive supplier last year, where they built really a kind of digital worldwide COE. and they try to identify all the key players, the best talents around the globe, driving the digital agenda for the entire 70 billion euro company, because you do not want to reinvent the wheel. That was really a great project. So it's really enterprise-wide, global, has the right talents in place. That's what companies are doing right now.
Yeah. By COE, you're speaking about centers of excellence, right?
Yes, correct. Sorry.
So that's all right. So it's I think that, you know, what you're describing is you see that in the past there were a lot of, let's say, resources and capabilities that were engaged in very transactional work, very sort of repetitive stuff, and the digitization, or at least employing some digital solutions, has sort of taken the burden of resources off, you know, all this kind of manual transactional kind of stuff, and freeing up the ability to go into more value added
correct. And use the data, right? So that you a lot of companies have amounts of data available, which can be so useful for decision making, yeah, for driving the business. And that's what they're picking up now, right? To really building this kind of huge pool of valuable data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Adi, going back to, you know, the Holcim journey so far, and I know that you've been in this for a couple of years now, how would you describe the Holcim journey if you look at from the beginning until sort of where we are now? Tell us a little bit about the types of digital strategies you've employed and what that's brought so far.
So I think the biggest game changer for us is an app where you can order ready-mix concrete online now. And you have to think about this. So there are the people on the job site, they order concrete, they are really busy, right? There is not only concrete coming in, there is steel coming in, there is wood coming in, there is glass coming in. Constructing something is dependent on traffic, it's dependent on weather. So it's a very, very fluid process all the time. It's not like you order something today for Thursday next week and then the order remains, right? That order will change 3 times minimum because the weather changes, because the schedule is delayed, because there is an event in town and basically the traffic has to be redirected, whatever. So, and in the past, basically, Joerg would call our dispatch office and would say, I need those 20 cubic meters of ready mix. And then Joerg would call 5 times because he has to change something. And every time he calls, he's in the waiting line. And also the office closes at 4. So for us, bringing an app where you can do this 24/7 has been like an immense customer experience boost that, of course, to the external world, it sounds so basic, right? But for us as an industry, it's a game changer because during COVID times, they were able to order from home, right? So all of this was changing and brought a lot of customer experience. And this app, of course, brings all the data that Joerg talks about. And when you think about what I said before, right? Then you come to these issues. Something is delayed on the job site. You have 3 trucks queuing up. The ready mix quality is changing because the ready mix is not poured timely enough. Trucks are outside. Traffic in the city is queuing up because our trucks are on the roads, right? People are disturbed. We block sidewalks and the likes. But now we have data. We have data of when the truck leaves, when the truck arrives at the job site, at what stage the unloading of the truck is. And we do simple stuff like sending chatbot messages to the job site to say, hey, I see you have 3 trucks that are not unloaded. Should we hold back with the next trucks? Again, it's not a moonshot rocket science idea, but if you think about it, you scale this to 150,000 job sites only in the US market. There is a huge impact on the efficiency of how we use our trucks. We can use them elsewise on the society because we avoid basically trucks queuing up in cities and the like. We avoid quality issues on the product. So for us, I think bringing stuff in that has been done 5 or 10 years back in other industries. I mean, we all order online on Amazon and Zalando for a long time, and it's so natural for us. But bringing this simple thing back into an industry like ours, it's a game changer. It's amazing. And this is what we try. Of course, we also look for the next moonshot and transformative idea, but there is so much great stuff out there from other industries that is not new or doesn't bring the big aha effect if I tell this to people like you. But for us as an industry, it brings the aha effect, and it always brings a scalable impact.
Yeah, and I think
across
that
the globe.
It's really important for businesses sort of in their, let's call it the earlier parts of the journey, or even those thinking about, you know, starting a digital transformation, is that you don't have to have the big moonshot idea, the thing that's going to change the world overnight. Typically, the first solutions that are the most impactful seem to be really basic, and maybe they seem to be really small, and they maybe even seem to be like, should I say, boring ideas. They're not like, you know, super sexy, sort of new age, you know, things that will change the world. But if you look at the impact that you can have on business processes, you can look at the impact that you have on customer experience. These can be absolutely huge. So, and you know, we haven't really spoken so much about what smaller businesses are doing. We're talking about very large organizations here, but I think the same applies very much to smaller businesses, and even those starting out in the early stages, is looking for small ideas, seemingly small ideas that can really make a big difference in terms of how you operate, is really where the value comes in. And Manuela, thank you for your comment. You have, I see Manuela has said that a lot of what we're speaking about here really resonates in terms of the work that's happening in the digitizing document data as SaaS. So I'm really pleased that, you know, this sort of rings true with you, Manuela, and you're right, there is a lot of this happening at the moment. So thanks for sharing that story a little bit. So let's talk about going forward, you know, what the outlook is going forward. And Joerg, you touched on this a bit, so maybe it's just to recap. But from where you are sitting now, what do you think the next phases of digital transformation typically look like? You know, there's been a lot that's happened in terms of technology development. There's been a lot that has happened as businesses mature in their processes, as they mature in their ability. For those that have been doing some of the stuff, you know, putting those more fundamental, basic parts in place, where do they go to from here?
Well, as I said, right, the world is changing so fast, and businesses are really become more and more data centric. So it's really that you now to have to implement the next level, and companies are starting with it, right? Machine learning, artificial intelligence, blockchain, analytics, they're all buzzwords, but companies are really starting to implement it, right? So, and it's so great that for some of the processes, as I said, I'm a finance guy. When you think about forecasting, right? 5 years ago, I talked to a corporate controller in a huge German chemical firm, and said, there will be always manual stuff. When it comes to forecasting, I said, are you stupid? No. Forecasting, you have to take out all the emotions. That's the best where you can do kind of predictive analysis, where you can have machine learning, artificial intelligence in place, because you get rid of emotions when it comes to forecasting. So companies are really going this way. Of course, when it comes to technology, at the moment, the hot topic is moving everything to the cloud. Yeah, that's another hot topic, right? So if it comes for big ERP systems like Oracle or S/4HANA, every company has to face it, right? And that's the next big topic. Companies are already in it or need to start this journey quite soon, which will definitely take a lot of effort when it comes to resources and budgets and so on and so forth. And then I said already, advanced analytics, but as well as simple things like data visualization tools. When it comes to all this kind of fancy tools you can use with your smartphone and so on and so forth. As you said, Adi, right, with all the app, that's definitely what will increase over the next couple of years as well. That using an app is quite normal for all business kind of processes, right? It's really that you can approve, see whatever kind of information you want on your smartphone, on your tablet. That's the next big thing companies are doing. Yeah. But moving to the cloud is definitely the most important thing right now for a lot of companies.
Speaking about, the data visualization, there are several businesses that I know of where the policy has become almost like an anti-PowerPoint or anti-slide deck kind of thing for any
Yes.
kind of business review or any kind of presentation. So instead of, those of us who've worked in corporate for a while being used to creating PowerPoint decks where you sort of have screenshots or you copy paste graphics, this is sort of no longer allowed in certain businesses now, because
It's all about dashboards. It's all about dashboards.
And everybody feeds off that information, which they would have had access to already anyway. So it's more saying, rather than spending your time in a meeting going through slide after slide of presentation, it's, here is the data. We all see the data. Do we understand it? That's the starting point, and now let's discuss what does this mean and what do we do from there. So it is definitely, as Adi mentioned, conversations are changing, and how we interact with each other and with data is definitely changing. So
but that means you have to do the homework, your homework, right? And when we are talking about digitalization, it's important that companies are still doing their homework. Homework means you need to have clean data to do it. Yeah. So, and that's one of the most important topics when it comes to digitalization, automation, that you need to have clean data that you can trust. Yeah.
And when you start using the data, actually, the cleansing will happen automatically. So this is what we experienced. We changed that approach completely, because in the past, we worked on master data alignment, cleaning the data for years and years and years, but we never came to a point to start using the data, right? Because it's never 100% correct. When you start with a small, simple set of data and you say, we will look at this every week and we will discuss about it every week and we will use this data to take the decisions, people really make sure that set of data all of a sudden gets clean and gets usable.
Correct.
Because nobody wants to be on the bottom of a league table and nobody wants to be on that table with the wrong set of data. So starting small, looking at it, making it transparent and talking about it and using it to take decisions, we think has a big impact on the data quality.
Absolutely, absolutely. And have the right governance in place, right? That when it comes to data changes, maintenance, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And the other thing in all of that, part of doing homework, which is not a small topic, is making sure that all your data is, shall we say, it's in the same place. So there's a single source of truth to data, and that if you do have different systems, that your data sets are synchronized, they're harmonious, rather than this data comes from here or that one comes from there. And, that's, especially where you have legacy systems and you have businesses that have been running for many years, that's often a big challenge to overcome as well. So Adi, what's next for Holcim?
So it goes exactly in the same direction. And I said it before, right? It's about using data, using it internally, using it externally, and using it always. We also move now into statistical demand forecasting. We have a project ongoing that does cement quality prediction. So we now start also using machine learning and much more algorithm to become more predictive and less reactive. And as part of that, I think what is important for us is that we work with the business people on the ground, because they now are exposed to new profiles that we have in the company, which are data scientists. We didn't have them before, right? But we have data scientists now, and that is a profile that will become more and more important for companies like ours and many others. And it's still a very abstract thing for our business people on the ground. And it's for us now teaching our business and the data scientists that basically we can only make use of the data if business and data scientists can speak to each other, can understand each other. And we still need to find out basically who has to go how far over the bridge so that this works, right? And Joerg, you spoke about dashboards before. We want to go a step further, because the dashboard in the business doesn't help us. The people don't have time to look at dashboards and analyze. We need to give them the insight to the data already. So basically, we need to put the insight to the data and wherever possible already tell them, and this is now what has to be done. And then basically business can execute and focus on the execution of what has to be done, because we learned something from the data. So that's really where we want to go and where we have to go.
We have a question just coming in from Ross. I'm not sure if it's directed to anyone specifically, so I'll just put it on the table, because we are speaking about data analytics. Ross is asking which tools are we using for data analysis at the moment? Which are the most demanding or popular tools?
That's a good question. So that really depends what kind of analytics you want to do, right? There's a SAP Analytics Cloud out. There's this various topic. There are various tools, right? Small, big. So it really depends. So Ross can definitely reach out to me, and I will give him some examples. Yeah. So.
Perfect. Thanks very much. And while we're speaking about giving some examples, let's talk a little bit about advice. So both of you, Adi and Joerg, are quite experienced in the field of digital transformation. I think you've both seen and experienced a lot, the good, the bad, and the ugly along the way. What advice would you give to anybody out there who is engaged in or about to be engaging in the space of digital transformation?
I think you need to step back a bit, and that's saying digital transformation is not only about technology. It's about people and stakeholders. I think that's one important topic. You need to enforce change management. You need to explain people what is changing, why is changing when it comes to digital transformation. You have to take the people with the journey. Yeah. So I think for me, the best example I always give is similar as my father. 4 or 5 years ago, for him it was a nightmare that people have a smartphone and a tablet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now he sees, because my kids told him how to use a smartphone and tablet. Now he's driving each and everybody crazy because he's spending 10 hours a day with his mobile and his tablet to see stock prices and whatsoever. Yeah. So take the people with a journey. That's important. And don't forget to train the people. It's great that you implement digital technologies, but the people need to know how to use them. What's the benefit? Yeah. That's very vertical. Don't forget the people. And last but not least, you need to develop your talent, your internal people, right? You need to identify the key people in your company who can support the digital strategy, the digital journey. So it's not only about technology, it's about, for me, my advice is look at the people, look at the change management aspect.
Yeah. And Angelique has just made a comment in the chat, which I think fits in really well at this point, which is a very valid question. Beyond training and skilling people how to use technology, how can we help people to actually trust the data? Because moving away, especially if you have been in the industry, especially if you've been in a particular role for a very long time, there is a tendency to rely on sort of gut feeling, to rely on, let's say, not so much on the data. So how do we help to make that sort of transition within the culture?
As I said, I think it's to really explain the benefits of the objective data available. Yeah, and it's really to tell stories, to bring certain examples to life with them. Don't leave them alone. Don't leave them alone. It's really you have to build a trust. Yeah, and if you're sitting in a digital transformation office, as I said, 50% of the time should be dealing with your stakeholders and your internal people, and that they rely on the data, that they commit to the data, that they feel, oh my God, it's really better now, right? So because I have a more robust set of data for my decision making. So really explaining the pluses, but as well there are minuses. There are as well disadvantages when it comes to all this, right? Because you're going to lose people on the way and so on and so forth. Be transparent. Be transparent. That's my advice, as much as you can.
Yeah, and I think as you start to rely a bit more on the data, or a lot more on the data, this is where naturally some interrogation of the data comes in as well. As Adi was saying, there's also becomes even more need to make sure that the data that's in there is very robust and can be relied on. So Adi, what advice would you give from your experience?
I mean, I can resonate really well with Joerg, right? It's about the change and bringing the people along in this journey. So we put a lot of emphasis on the change management, and we do that very analog. So we launched a digital skill building program that is not about making coders or data scientists out of our business people, but it's again to bring the 3 pillars of our approach: the customer centricity, the usage of data, and the open innovation interaction. And we bring the people together. So we go with them in 3 cities over 3 modules. We expose them to startups and to other people from the industry. We make them work on live data cases that come from their organization that they can take back and continue to work on. We make them do live customer interviews and the likes. So we take them out of their environment. We expose them basically into the ecosystem and into all these topics, but not with orchestrated use cases, but we always take a use case out of Joerg's day-to-day life and out of Brigitte's day-to-day life, because then they take it back and they continue to work on it and we accompany them. So we do analog change management. And the other thing that I think is really important is to take away the shininess and gloriness from digital transformation and innovation is all about ideation. I mean, the ideation is nice and fluffy and important, but we basically focus on the execution. And the execution is hard work. And the execution does not stop with everybody has the app on the phone and can access. I then need to make sure that Rachel and that Joerg and Brigitte are accessing the app, and they access it every day, and they do everything I want them to do always in the app. Because only if I train every muscle every day permanently, the shape of my body will change. And basically, we do a lot of work with the business to say it's all good to have ideas. If we are not able to execute on them, our transformation will fail. And that also means we need to bring our support process functions on this journey, because you don't measure execution on an EBITDA impact. You will not see it in the EBITDA or in your bottom line on the P&L. You need different KPIs to measure this, right? You need to look at how many people access the app, like what is the activity level. So the KPIs we need to use to measure the success is changing completely, right? So there's a lot of stuff that is, you can call it boring or dirty or hands-on execution work that has to be done. But this is the only way that will basically get you into the transformation. We have an ideation backlog that is huge, but nobody is executing those ideas. So they just sit in an ideation bucket somewhere and sit there. And that's great, but people have to work on the execution. And I think that links to Angelique's question on the data. We try to bring very small pragmatic data cases, and we involve external customers. And if our people see that our customers are actually ahead of us with their mindset and are okay on this transparency, this is when our people start joining the journey. When we see our customers are okay to do this, we're not losing customers just because we tell them to order through an app now, or just because we tell them, let's look at the data together. This is when our people open up. They need to feel it's also okay for the customers. Perfect. And that works quite well.
So I'm just keeping a little bit of an eye on time, because we're going to run short. But there was one final question I had for both Adi and Joerg, and I think, Karen, you've kind of, you're on the same page as us here, but we've talked about all the things that, let's say the positives, and we have also balanced it with some pragmatic parts. But what are the kind of risks that we need to avoid or to mitigate during digital transformation? And Karen has asked the question about, what are some lessons learned during unsuccessful transformation journeys? So perhaps if I could have just a minute or so from each of you about, what are some of the not so nice things that have happened and that we would want to try and avoid or mitigate going forward?
I think one of the key things is don't think in silos, right? It's really, as I said in the beginning, it's really end-to-end and enterprise, right? Otherwise, you're starting to try to fix small problems. But just to give you an example, I talked a few years back with the head of a shared service center in Poland, and he was so proud that he implemented, I think, 1,500 robots. I said, 1,500 robots for what? Yeah, it makes my life so much easier. Then I met the guy a year later, and he had to change processes, and it was a nightmare because there was not strategy behind it, right? So really have the end-to-end view, enterprise-wide, is definitely key. As I said, don't forget the people is another really, really important topic. And prioritization, because at the end of the day, resources are limited. And I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about people as well. My experience is I'm talking always to the 5 people in a company doing projects. Yeah, even when I'm coming back 5 years to a company like Daimler, still the 5 same people are sitting there doing the projects. So it's really about prioritization. And as I said, digital is great, digital is key, but don't forget to do your homework. Without doing your homework, you will fail. And doing your homework now, back as an example, I'm a finance guy, take out complexity out of your system. Reduce your legal entities, reduce your cost centers, clean up your chart of account. That's so important. Yeah, so doing your homework, it's a prerequisite for being successful in your digital journey.
Thank you, Joerg. Adi, any last words from you on risks or problem areas to avoid?
Yeah, I think I said it before, right? It's don't forget about the execution side of things and bring the people along in the journey. For us, are 2 of the most important elements that we think make us successful. And also maybe, I don't think an entire transformation can be unsuccessful. There are also always elements that don't work out, but I think, and that's okay, right? So you need to stay open-minded, you need to stay humble, and you need to stay flexible to also adjust along the journey, and not think that what you set out on your first digital transformation strategy will always remain the right endpoint, because you learn so much along this journey, because you interact constantly with so many new people and players, and you learn so much new things through all the data that is coming in, that you have to stay open-minded and flexible enough to iterate and make use of that as it occurs and as you learn from that, and not feel bad about iterating about this and changing, right?
It's an ever
Because
evolving space.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So we're coming towards the end of our time. Just before we disappear, I'd like to just suggest again, if anybody has any areas that you think for some of our next sessions you'd specifically like to deep dive into, we'd really welcome some suggestions in the chat, and we'll be following up with we'll be following up with you afterwards to get any suggestions on that. But I'd like to thank very much both Adi and Joerg for your time and coming on the panel today. I know that we all have limitations in terms of time available, especially as we're coming up to the last part of the year. So thank you very much for your time and also for the great insights that you shared.
Thank you.
I'd also like to add quickly to everyone, thank you so much. And also, if you wish to continue the discussion, or you want to share any topic ideas outside of this chat, the Women in Digital Forum would be a great place to do that. We will start a discussion there, and you're welcome to share anything. To access the forum, you'll need to become a member of the site. You can do that at womenindigitalswitzerland.com/join. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll end the live now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.